The story starts with Jonathan Shale, a highly skilled mercenary and former military operative, stepping away from an operation together with his elite team. They carry out the mission with success, but not long after, they uncover a troubling detail. The mission they just completed is actually unauthorized. This revelation catches them off guard, and because of it, all of them are dismissed from active duty. With no mission remaining and no further orders to follow, the members of the team go their separate ways. Now left without work, Shale decides to return to his hometown of Miami, hoping to take a break and figure out what he should do next. His teammates assure him that something will come along eventually. The scene transitions to the warm and lively streets of Miami. The camera slowly zooms in on Jane Hetzko, a dedicated and caring teacher at a local high school. Jane is in the middle of teaching her class, fully involved with her students and clearly committed to helping them learn. But the peaceful environment in the school doesn't last long. Suddenly, chaos breaks out on the school campus. A violent fight erupts among students, and it quickly becomes clear that the incident isn't random. The entire situation appears to be planned ahead of time to specifically target one student. Jane, along with another teacher named Mr. Sherman, rushes over to stop the sudden ambush. Even with the threat and confusion around them, they manage to step in just in time and protect the student who is being attacked. Strangely, the student they save insists that he didn't need any help. It's obvious that he's trying to maintain a strong image and avoid being seen as weak by others. Following the altercation, Jane approaches the student who seems responsible for starting the whole thing, Juan Lacasse. Juan isn't just any school troublemaker. He is the well-known leader of a dangerous gang called the Kings of Destruction, often shortened to Code. She tells him to look at her for 2 minutes. Juan shows no interest. He stares at her with a cold expression, mocks her with sarcasm, and warns her to stay out of his matters. Then he walks away, clearly showing he doesn't plan to listen. Still disturbed but not giving up, Jane and Mr. Sherman head straight to Principal Claude Rolla's office to report the incident. They push the principal to take some action against Juan and his gang, especially after Jane reveals that she has been personally threatened. She reminds him that Juan said he was going to stab her with a kitchen knife at 4:15 p.m. Rolla responds calmly, denying that the student ever said such a thing. But Rolla brushes off their concerns, saying there isn't enough strong evidence to expel Juan. Jane becomes visibly upset and storms out of the office, telling the principal that she will get the proof he needs herself. When school ends and Jane gets to her car, she finds herself surrounded by several members of the KOD gang. The keyhole of her car is blocked with what appears to be gum, making it difficult to unlock. Juan makes a hand sign toward her, but Jane stands her ground. She boldly throws the same sign back at him, but in reverse. She finally manages to unlock the door and drive away, while the gang continues to shout crude comments behind her. One of them yells out that they'll see her later. When Jane gets home, she feels relieved to see Shale waiting for her. She rushes into his arms, joyful and comforted after being apart from him for so long. Shale tells her that he has been discharged from his military assignment. They laugh together and talk about what might come next, wondering about his future now that his service has ended. Soon after, Shale receives a voicemail from one of his old team members. There's a possible job opportunity that might help him earn some income. They meet at a strip club to talk about it. Joey, one of Shale's most trusted teammates, encourages him to consider the offer. They introduce him to a client and a competitor named John Janus. Janus later turns out to be a dangerous figure who attempts to kill Shale. Shale quickly realizes that the job includes guarding drug shipments and protecting them from rival gangs and government agents. This type of work doesn't align with Shale's values. He's a man with principles and refuses to be part of anything criminal. The client explains that they're looking for trained soldiers who can guarantee the security of the shipments. Shale responds by making it clear he understands the job is about protecting drug shipments, and he refuses to participate. By turning down the offer, Shale shows that a true soldier acts with discipline and integrity, not as a heartless killer. The next morning, Jane decides to go for a jog along the beach. She doesn't realize that a member of the KOD gang is waiting for her. As she runs past, the man suddenly attacks. He strikes her hard, injuring her knee and launching a violent assault. Luckily, Shale is nearby. He hears the noise and quickly runs over, chasing the attacker away. Without wasting time, he rushes Jane to the hospital for medical care.
While she recovers, Jane opens up to Shale about her suspicions. She believes the assault isn't random but organized, and she's convinced someone from the school might be involved. She pleads with Shale to take care of things while she stays away from school for a few days. She also asks him to make some important calls on her behalf. Seeing how terrified and hurt Jane is, Shale promises to protect her. He vows that the person responsible won't go unpunished. He tells her to rest and decides to step in secretly by taking her place at school. His goal is to find out who is behind the violence and make them pay. Shale begins to plan his undercover mission. He and his former team set up a strategy to infiltrate the school. To avoid being linked to Jane, he adopts a new identity, James Smith. Using this fake name, he submits an application to work as a temporary teacher and soon receives a call for an interview. Smith walks into the office and greets the man behind the desk. Thinking he's just a staff member, he introduces himself as the substitute teacher. The man corrects him with a straight face. He's actually the principal. During the meeting, Principal Rolla appears polite and easygoing. He informs Mr. Smith that he will be on a trial period for a while. Smith replies confidently, stating that he will do his best while covering for Jane. Though he acts calm and cooperative, his mind remains focused on his real mission, to uncover the truth about Jane's attack and expose any corruption within the school. On his first day in class, Smith steps into a room full of loud, disrespectful students. The environment is chaotic, with students shouting and ignoring any sense of order. Still, Smith remains composed. He introduces himself to the class, letting them know he will be covering for Miss Hetzko for the next few days. He then calmly walks to the front and begins taking attendance, all the while observing the lack of discipline and the disinterest in learning that plague the classroom.
Later, in the staff lounge, Smith runs into Mr. Sherman again. There, he is introduced to the school librarian, Hannah Dillon. They have a short but meaningful conversation. Sherman explains how dangerous the KOD gang is, emphasizing how they use fear to control the school. Hannah adds her belief that the gang is responsible for the attack on Jane. She mentions Juan Lucas by name and identifies him as the leader of the KOD. She even hints that Principal Rolla may be assisting the gang, though Sherman pushes back on that idea. He defends Rolla, stating that he's a former cop and wouldn't get involved in anything illegal. Despite the defense, Smith grows more suspicious of Rolla's role in the school.
During a private conversation with the principal, Smith notices several odd details, most notably a flashy gold watch on Rolla's wrist, which doesn't seem to match the modest income of a school administrator. Their conversation becomes a subtle game, with both men carefully testing each other through vague statements and measured reactions. By the end of their talk, Smith comments on the boldness it takes for someone to wear such a flashy watch in a place like this. In response, Claude proudly claims that the watch came from the Junior League and makes it clear that anyone who wants it would have to take it off his wrist themselves. He demonstrates his toughness, making a point about how he commands respect among the students. The meeting ends with Rolla implying that having power holds more weight than doing what's right. This only deepens Smith's suspicions. That evening, Smith reconnects with his old military team. He presents a new plan to monitor the school through surveillance. They will install hidden cameras and observe the KOD gang's activities in order to collect solid evidence. Some members are hesitant at first, but most of them agree to the mission. The next day in the classroom, Smith begins a lesson about the Vietnam War. As he writes on the board, a student named Tay throws a crushed soda can at him. Without even turning fully, Smith catches the can in midair and tosses it back, striking Tay squarely on the forehead. The classroom falls into stunned silence. Tay leaps up, ready to fight, while the other students cheer him on. Smith, however, stays calm and handles the situation with precision. He grabs Tay's arm, controls his movements, and brings him to the ground without using excessive force. Next, Smith turns his attention to another student, Rodriguez, whom he had previously noticed carrying an ice pick. He calmly asks him to hand over the weapon. When Rodriguez refuses, Smith grabs his hand and lightly twists one finger until the weapon drops. His actions send a clear message. He is not someone to test. The entire classroom goes silent. Smith then warns 3 specific students that they will face the consequences of their behavior, making it clear he's now in control. Smith begins teaching again, gradually earning the students' respect through a steady mix of strength, discipline, and control. Later, Tay and Rodriguez report his earlier actions to Principal Rolla while visiting the school nurse. In response, Rolla sends the school security officer, Marvin, to investigate. However, when Marvin arrives, he finds a surprising scene. The classroom is calm and focused. The students are seated quietly, paying attention to the lesson. Taken aback, Marvin relays this unusual calm back to Rolla. Uncertain of how to proceed, Rolla chooses to delay any decision until the class period ends. As the minutes pass, tension builds. Lacasse, one of the top leaders of the KOD gang, attempts to provoke Smith. With a calculated smirk, he leans forward and directs a threatening question toward him, asking whether Smith has ever been shot before. The comment is clearly clearly meant to intimidate, but Smith remains composed and unfazed. Later in the day, Smith reviews footage from the hidden cameras that his teammate Skids has installed throughout the school. While monitoring the live feed, Smith notices Principal Rolla walking directly toward his classroom, clearly with something on his mind. Moving quickly, Smith ensures that everything inside the classroom appears perfectly normal before Rolla arrives. When Rolla enters, he confronts Smith with a serious concern. He explains that several students are threatening legal action in response to Smith's disciplinary methods. Rolla demands an apology from Smith to prevent further escalation and avoid immediate dismissal. However, Smith calmly reminds him of the proper protocol. He states that a teacher cannot be fired without due process and must be given at least 2 weeks' notice by law. The confident response catches Rolla slightly off guard. Acknowledging the technicality, Rolla agrees to the 2-week time frame, but grows increasingly suspicious of Smith's composed demeanor and growing influence over the students. He begins to investigate further, ordering a background check on James Smith, but every document he uncovers is part of a carefully constructed fake identity created and planted by Smith's team. Later that day, Smith drives Jane home. Upon entering her house, Jane discovers a handwritten letter left by some of her students. The message expresses their appreciation, concern, and support for her well-being. Overwhelmed with emotion, Jane begins to cry. Smith tries to comfort her, but the emotional strain of everything they're facing causes a minor disagreement between them. Despite the tension, their bond remains solid. They both stay fully committed to the mission, determined to expose the truth and protect the students. The next morning, Smith walks back into the classroom, prepared to resume teaching. Juan, Lacasse, and their usual group of troublemakers enter late, clearly attempting to challenge his authority in front of the class. Smith calls out Juan for being late, informing him that his tardiness has earned him a demerit. In response, Juan smirks and sarcastically asks if he should write "sorry" on the blackboard multiple times, trying to make a joke of the situation. Smith calmly raises the stakes, telling him to write it 100 times instead. Understanding that direct defiance could backfire, Juan agrees to the task, but before taking his seat, he delivers a quiet threat attempting to shake Smith's confidence. Smith, however, remains unbothered. Rather than reacting emotionally, he shifts the energy in the classroom. He begins a serious discussion, using a student named Jerome to lead into a larger conversation about the future. Smith asks the class to reflect on where they see themselves in a few years, what kind of lives they want to live, and what might happen if they continue down a destructive path. The class begins to change. Slowly, the tough and guarded attitudes that once dominated the room start to break down. One by one, the students begin opening up. They listen closely as Smith speaks about choices, responsibility, and the possibilities beyond street life. The room grows quiet and thoughtful. Shortly after class ends, Principal Rolla enters the room unexpectedly. This time, he seems pleased. He expresses satisfaction with how Smith handled the situation with Juan, especially without resorting to violence. With a friendly tone and a smile, he invites Smith to visit his office after the faculty meeting later that day. What Smith doesn't realize is that Rolla has a different plan in mind. Later that afternoon, Rolla secretly meets with Juan and Lacasse. They come to a quiet but deadly agreement. Smith has become too much of a threat. It's time to eliminate him, but Smith is already ahead of them. Through the surveillance cameras he had installed earlier, he watches their secret meeting unfold. Immediately recognizing the danger, he prepares himself for the worst. As evening falls, he straps on a bulletproof vest, arms himself, and chooses the school library as the place to make his stand. Soon after, Juan arrives with a group of armed men hired by Rolla to carry out the assassination. They storm the library, expecting an easy kill. Instead, they're met with brutal resistance. Smith draws on his combat experience and training, striking back hard and fast. One by one, he takes them down, tossing their unconscious bodies out the window without hesitation. As the battle escalates, one of the gang members manages to grab Smith's gun and fires, hitting him. Believing they've succeeded, Juan commands another man to kill the librarian and orders the rest to leave quickly. But Smith isn't dead. Rising to his feet, wounded but unbroken, he unleashes one final move, grabbing Juan and hurling him through the window. Juan lands on top of the others, stunned and staring up in disbelief at Smith's unstoppable power. Later that night, Principal Rolla steps outside the school building, only to find Smith waiting calmly. Caught off guard, Rolla tries to act casual, masking his surprise. Smith matches the performance, pretending as if the evening has been completely ordinary. When he casually brings up the earlier meeting, Rolla, struggling to maintain his composure, murmurs that it's too late. Neither man says more, but the truth lingers heavily between them. Meanwhile, Mr. Sherman visits visits Jane at her home. He offers her comfort and a listening ear. During their conversation, something clicks in his mind. The way Smith moves, talks, and carries himself. It all reminds Sherman of someone. Piece by piece, the puzzle forms. He starts to believe that Smith is actually Shale, Jane's husband and a former soldier. The clues line up too neatly to ignore. Elsewhere, Smith's teammate Joey continues tracking the gang. He stays close, following Juan's movements and sending a quick message to alert Smith when the gang switches cars. Later that evening, Smith returns home. Jane is visibly upset. She confronts him with the truth she's now uncovered. Sherman has told her everything. She's figured out who he really is and why he's been at the school all along. Smith doesn't deny it. Instead, he lays everything out. His suspicions about Principal Rola's involvement with the K-Odd gang and his unwavering determination to stop them and protect the students. The team remains on high alert, continuing their surveillance efforts. One day, Joey calls Smith and directs him to head to the port. A major drug deal is underway. Smith races to the scene. Together, he and Joey observe the gang meeting with buyers on a nearby boat. Once they've confirmed what's happening, they act quickly. With precision and force, they move in. Smith targets the gang members on the docks, while Joey handles the buyers on the boat. The operation is going smoothly until a twist occurs. Holland, a teammate who has always questioned the mission, suddenly gives an order to Bull to take Smith out. A brutal fight breaks out between Smith and Bull. They trade powerful blows, but Smith's skill and resilience win out. He knocks Bull unconscious. Seeing Smith's dedication, Holland experiences a change of heart. He joins the fight. Together, they secure the drug money and dump the remaining drugs into the ocean. The next morning, Rolla watches a news broadcast about the drug bust. His expression tightens as panic sets in. Before he has time to react, he receives a furious call from the drug lord. The man demands that Rolla repay the lost money and product immediately. Shaken, Rolla rushes to the school and confronts Juan. As they talk, the pieces fall into place. Rolla realizes that Smith is the one responsible for everything, but Smith doesn't hide it. He makes it clear that the money recovered from the drug bust is now being used for the good of the school, including funding for free pizza for the students. Rolla, enraged, storms in and fires Smith on the spot. With a sneer, he declares that Smith no longer teaches history, because he is history. Despite being dismissed, Smith earns something far more valuable than a job: the respect and admiration of the students and Mr. Sherman. Sherman even offers to help further, but Smith cautions him to be careful, especially if Rolla truly has ties to the gang. Sherman still wants to believe in Rolla's innocence, but his loyalty makes it hard to see the truth clearly. That night, Smith is ambushed. Gang members and their corrupt allies move in, determined to finish him. Gunfire erupts in the darkness, and during the chaos, Smith's car crashes violently into a nearby house. But his combat instincts save him. At the same time, Mr. Sherman sneaks into the school basement, searching for evidence that might expose the truth. But Juan and Tallis are waiting. They catch him in the act. In a sudden and horrifying moment, Principal Rolla appears. Without hesitation, he pulls the trigger and kills Sherman himself. Unbeknownst to them, a student witnesses everything from the shadows. That student later gives a statement that would change everything. By morning, rumors spread like wildfire. Word travels fast. Smith is dead. The students mourn him. Teachers talk in hushed tones. The man who stood up for them, who fought for their future, is believed to be gone. But then a voice cuts through the silence. Someone asks who died, and the answer is chilling, because it's Smith himself standing there alive. His return stuns everyone. The gang and their allies freeze with fear. Their plans crumble. Smith wastes no time. He storms straight to Mr. Wolson, a known corrupt staff member, and demands answers. Wolson tries to deny everything, to plead ignorance, but Smith's pressure is relentless. It's clear he's not just looking for answers, he's enjoying watching them squirm. Meanwhile, the KOD retaliates. They target Jane. Her home is attacked. The student who had seen Sherman's murder races to warn Smith, but he never makes it. Juan intercepts him, kidnapping both the student and Jane. When Smith arrives at the scene, the gang, still unaware of his true identity, allows him inside, but things escalate quickly. A violent fight breaks out. Smith holds his ground, but he's outnumbered and eventually captured. Juan, now in control, contacts his boss and reveals the truth. Smith is actually Shale. The boss gives a chilling command: Smith must die. As Juan prepares to carry out the execution, the doorbell rings. Jane opens it cautiously. It's her landlady. In a split-second decision, Jane sends the woman away, buying just enough time. Smith takes the opportunity. He strikes fast, stabbing one of the gang members and taking down several others in a sudden, brutal burst of action. But he's not fast enough to reach Jane. Juan grabs her, pressing a gun to her head, and threatens to kill her if Smith doesn't surrender. Smith stops cold. He gives up, refusing to risk her life. Juan, smug and ready to deliver the final blow, begins to mock him until a single shot rings out. It's the student. He pulls the trigger and wounds Juan, disarming him and saving Jane. With the gang broken and Jane safe, Smith knows what he must do next. There's one threat left standing, Principal Claude Rolla. The final battle is set. Smith and his team return to the school, ready to take it back. The halls turn into a war zone. Classrooms are torn apart, blood is spilled, chaos reigns. Smith and his team fight through it all, one brutal encounter after another. They expose the traitors, dismantle the gang, and slowly reclaim control. But it comes at a price. Some teammates don't make it. One is shot in the head, another sacrifices himself, detonating explosives to take out a group of enemies and save the rest. Each loss fuels the fire. The fight rages on. Then, from the shadows, Rolla re-emerges. He shoots Holland in the back, taking him down, and retreats with his last loyal men. They vanish into the dark, planning a final ambush. But Smith is ready. He kills the lights and moves forward, undeterred. The last confrontation begins. Rolla is wild with rage, swinging sloppily. Smith stays focused, his strikes clean and deliberate. The two clash, fist to fist, trading blow after blow in a desperate final brawl. Suddenly, a shot rings out. Smith takes a bullet to the shoulder. He stumbles, but before the enemy can fire again, Holland, still barely alive, uses the last of his strength to take the shooter down. Then Holland dies. Now it's just Smith and Rolla. The two fight brutally, exhausted and wounded. Finally, Rolla reaches for a gun. He points it at Smith, confused and angry. He asks why Smith would do all of this. It couldn't just be about money. Smith's reply is quiet but resolute. He doesn't do it for cash or glory. Some lessons can't be taught. They have to be lived. Then, with one final blow, Smith ends it. Rolla falls to the ground, dead. Smith steps out of the destroyed school, bloodied but unbroken. Joey is waiting, hurt but alive. In the end, only Smith and Joey survive. The gang is gone. The corruption is crushed. The school is free at last.